On this episode, we bring back Zen from the Zen Engine. He talks to us about tools, having the right tools, and how it makes jobs much more easier. And how do you make your motorcycle toolkit complete?
Good to have you. We're excited to get you on. Always the interesting topics that we think you're the one who we can reach out to. So we got you back.
Thank you
Uh,
so much.
this time it's going to be tools, tools specifically for a guy who wants to do DIY or just wants to do basic motorcycle maintenance, and the guy who goes on a ride and he has a toolkit, but you know what? Is that the real toolkit that he has to carry? So I'm gonna get right into it. And first thing I'm gonna ask you: does someone really require the right tools or quality tools? Does it matter?
So I mean, when you speak about quality, and since I started the garage, I have really, thought about this, that what exactly do we mean when we say quality tools? Because there's a whole range of tools which vary from, cheap to expensive, and the same tool can have a wide range of costs, right? Which looks like the exact same set, but it can cost as little as, a few thousand rupees to all the way to, 20, 25,000 for the exact same tool. So it becomes a little bit difficult to try to understand what exactly do we mean by quality. So primarily, first thing I would like to make it very clear that we are not going to even consider the absolutely cheap, non-branded, the things that you get off Amazon and those sort of tools. I'm not even going to consider them. They should be avoided at all costs. What we are going to compare when we say about quality, something like, Indian made tools like, Force or Taparia is a very well-known brand. Compare them to something like, PB Swiss tools or Vera tools or Wurth tools and something like that. So when we say about quality, there are a few things that matter. Point one being the strength of the tool itself, how much force can it take. Point two, which is very applicable in my scenario, is corrosion prevention. So especially for someone who's doing DIY and who is at home, who is not going to be using the tools every single day, he's going to be probably using the tool realistically once a month. The tools are going to sit in a shelf for a long amount of time, and that risks corrosion. So we need to look at, okay, how corrosion prevention good is the tool.
Mm.
Uh, and then there's a third aspect, which when you use the tool daily and you use multiple different branded tools, you understand. So a lot of the times what happens is when we have a tight bolt or a tight screw or something on a motorcycle, which, if you try to apply force to open, and this happens a lot, and my mechanics are completely trained for it. So what they do is they have a taparia and a force set. So they try to use those Indian make tools, and if it is, and for 90% of the time it works. I'm not putting them down or anything. 90% of the time they work. But only when it is the bolt is seized or something like that, and they try to do it, but they know that, okay, this is not going to work. So if you try harder, you're going to strip the bolt head, and it's going to be a much bigger mess.
Mm.
For the exact same job, exact same tool, we just switch to a more expensive tool, something like a Wurth or a PB Swiss, and it is the exact same thing, but it opens up.
Yeah.
The grip of the tool is so much better, and that is the most important thing when we think about expensive tools. So a lot of people ask me questions, that both tools are so expensive, even though they are same strength, same corrosion prevention, but this grip factor
Mm.
is one of the primary differences when it comes to quality.
Yeah. Is it got to do with even the clearances? Like basically, I'm a guy who, I enjoy my tools, and I put a lot of money into my tools. And I've realized that the quality ones that you're saying, they have the clearances between a socket and a nut. There's a less that I can feel that there's less play. Does that come into effect as well with better quality
So,
tools they have?
so when we are the two aspects of tools that we are comparing, which is the Indian and the
Mm.
international one, in those two tools, the clearance difference is going to be pretty negligible.
Okay.
What we are discussing is that when we get something off Amazon,
Mm.
and you get something like a really cheap tool, like 1/10 the cost of a proper tool, you'll get something like really cheap. They will have very high clearances.
Yeah.
And usually when I am given a set of tools, saying, "Boss, these are the tools that you have to use," the first thing I do is check clearance. If I don't know the brand or anything like that, first thing I do is check clearance, and if it has a lot of clearance, it's out of the question, even if it is perfectly polished, clean, and everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, a good tool does feel good also, right? In your hand, you know that there's something, there is a sense of quality to it. That's what you're saying. Basically, that's the start of a good
No
tool.
question. No question. Absolutely. It will feel much better. But then the problem is for a lot of people who are listening to the podcast, who
Mm.
are going to go out and going out to buy a set of tools.
Mm.
The problem is you will not get Indian made tool and an international tool both in the same shop for you to be able to take them both and feel the difference.
Yeah, got it.
You will not have the frame of reference,
Yeah, yeah.
right? That is why it becomes a little bit difficult to say by feel.
Mm. So I think the brand and the price, maybe those are a good indicators of a reliable brand is a good indicator of a good brand. That's a good product. That's what you're trying to say.
With terms of mechanical tools, whether they are, ratchet sets or pliers or bit boxes or pure metal tools, I can put my hands on and say you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
No question about it. Once you start getting into electronics, then yeah, it's a little bit of a different game. But with pure mechanical hand tools, you get what you pay for, no question. Whether you make use of it or no is up to you, but you will get what you pay for.
Got it. So, okay. So I'm a guy who's, I've just got my bike. I have a toolkit in my bike. Is that enough or do I need more?
So this depends. So when I talk to people about DIY projects, there are two different sort of tool sets which come to my mind. Point one being, that you have a garage, you have a space where you can store tools and you can work on your motorcycles, and that is sort of like a DIY home garage. And point two is, okay, you're out on a long ride, you need a toolkit for if something you need to do in the middle of the road, right? These two are very different from each other. You will be doing the exact same job, but the tool sets that you will carry will vastly differ. At home, you can have something which can take up a lot of space. That should not be a problem, right? You can have different types of tools and so on and so forth. When you're on a motorcycle, when you're traveling, you want it to be as compact as possible, right? So the difference being, when you are on the motorcycle, you will have a lot of adjustable or multi-purpose tools, if I may put it that way. So you will have an adjustable spanner. You'll have something like probably a Swiss Army, multi-tool, something like that, which will do a lot of the jobs, not perfectly. It will not be the easiest tool to work with, but one tool will do multiple jobs. So then you save up on space.
Yeah.
When you're at home, you can have a bigger sort of tool set which will make it easier for you to work. So coming back to your question, when you say I have my toolkit in the bike, and that is basically given for any sort of emergency roadside maintenance that you may need to do.
Yeah.
Even that, although is not really apt enough for much bigger issues. So if you have a much bigger problem, then eventually you will have to call an RSA or something like that. But if you want to do DIY projects at your home, that is definitely not enough.
Yeah. So I think I'll give you an example. I had on my Tiger, the motorcycle toolkit was something that was there, and then I never bothered opening it up and checking, is it something that will really come in handy? And then come to think of it, the front socket is an Allen socket.
Right.
And hex Allen, and it didn't have it in the toolkit. And
Wow.
that's when I started understanding, you know what, you've got to really open that motorcycle toolkit and start thinking of what can go wrong,
Yeah.
and then probably try to make that motorcycle toolkit a little more a little better for what you want to do with it.
No question, no question.
Yeah.
So especially in two scenarios: one, if you're planning to travel to remote places, and two, if you have a niche motorcycle, something like a Tiger, even though it's pretty common in our circle, once you start going into the rural areas of India, it's a niche motorcycle. So people may or may not have the tools for it.
Yeah.
Local garages may or may not have the tools for it.
Yeah.
So if you have a niche motorcycle, or if you're planning to go to remote places, you should have a certain amount of tools with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason I wanted to really have a chat with you on this one was, are garage tools very different to somebody who's doing a home DIY? Is there something that is completely different to what someone like me would buy and stock up my home at a garage?
So they are not massively different. There are few little differences here and there, but they are not massively different. What we are looking at a difference is basically in the fundamentals of it, at a garage when we are working, what we want is maximum efficiency. And we are in no lack of space. So I will give you a simple example, right? So you have something like a very common 8 bolt, 10 bolt, 12 bolt. These are very, very common on pretty much any of the motorcycles out there. Now, a home garage guy will have one ratchet set, which will have 8 10 12 a lot of sockets in there. He will have an extension. He will have a T handle on top. And then he can just, to do different bolts, he can just keep switching the sockets and open all of them bolts, right? With relative ease, and that is how I started when I started working on motorcycles. But when we move to a professional garage where we want maximum efficiency, we don't have a ratchet set. We have three different T-type T-handle sets. So we have an 8 T handle, we have a 10 T handle, and we have a 12 T handle. Because they are much faster, much quicker. They do the exact same job, no question. But they are much faster, much quicker for the mechanics to use, and that brings down our working time a lot. So these are the efficiency part of it is the only major, difference between a home garage and a professional garage.
Yeah. So I believe you also started off before your garage. You must have done a lot of DIY. Do you have a horrible story that you have done with a DIY job? Because I've got a few.
I've got a few. Point one, I had a Benelli 302 back in the day so mine was the first motorcycle in the city that I had taken, and I had done about 12,000 kilometers on it, and by that point I had just out of curiosity opened the fiber panels and seen how they open and close and so on and so forth. I was fairly well with my hands because I had a lot of experience working on engines and so on and so forth in my degree. So I was not new to tools or something like that, but bikes I was new to. So I opened the firings off and on and had different looks here and there and so on and so forth. We did the chain sprocket. I had a friend who was helping me out. We did the chain sprocket. We ordered a new DID chain sprocket. Now I realized that the chain is in a loop with the swing arm, like it is in the Dominar or the KTM 390, and it is a sealed chain. Back then I did not have a grinder or something or a chain tool to break it loose and remove the chain in one piece. So eventually we ended up removing the whole swing arm. And then we realized that okay, it is in lock with the swing arm as well. So it's not like you can remove the swing arm and the chain slides out. No, it passes through a loop in the middle of the swing arm. So then you eventually have to get it cut, no question. So then we had to take it to a mechanic who would cut it for us. But then we thought, okay, we should have done that in the first place. But now we come to the tricky part of it, right? So the next thing I figured out is that I did not have a radiator guard on my 302, and how it works, how the wheel and the radiator are positioned is that the radiator had got a lot of pin bends and everything. Again, one lousy weekend sitting at home, what to do? So I said, okay, let's remove the radiator completely and we'll straighten out the fins and everything and put it back. Fair enough. So we removed the radiator. I actually had a full time-lapse video of it. We got the radiator out, kept it, straightened the fins and everything. And I said, okay, I'll come back tomorrow and put it back. Right. Now what I did not realize is that I had we live in Mumbai, so there are a lot of mosquitoes. So I had a coil of, that mosquito Mortein coil, which I completely forgot. And that burnt and fell on a piece of cardboard, and that cardboard burnt, and then there were my old tires kept next to that cardboard, then those tires caught fire. So I'm sitting in my room and I'm smelling something, something does not seem right. And then after 5 minutes I just go out, I open the window, and outside my garage there's this whole big black puff of smoke coming out. I said, oh God. So then I ran down. I had to pull those tires out of the garage, put them in. I had a backyard, so I put them in the backyard in the mud and everything. But by then half of my bike's fairing had burnt off, the wiring harness had gone.
Wow. So you've done a real fiery job. That's what you've done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from a swing arm thing, I remember once pulling the swing arm completely out and letting the chain fall down. And then while I was putting it back on, I didn't realize that the chain has to go above the top part of the swing arm and make a loop. So the swing arm was, so the chain was below. And I've installed the whole swing arm. I'm trying to put the tires in, and then I realized, you know what? I can't see the chain coming up.
Right. But one thing I never did was I always had a good quality tool set.
Yeah.
I never used anything of Amazon. I had the basic bare minimum, which is Tafaria. In my experience, is the bare minimum that you should get.
Yeah.
Anything below that, in terms of price point, you should just not bother with. Even Tafaria, to some extent, if you don't have the right, feel of the hand, you may end up stripping boards or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's the bare minimum that you should get. So I started off with Tafaria tools and nothing below that.
Got it. Cool. So I'm gonna make this the last question, and I'll make it an interesting one. What are the 10 tools that somebody should have in their garage? I've got mine. I've got mine in front of me. So, I mean, if you want me to go first, I can go first. If you want to go first, you can go first.
You go first.
Okay. So, paddock stand for sure. If I'm sitting on it, torque wrench.
Yep.
Ratchets, combination wrenches for sure, or a tool set, a good proper tool set. Cable lubers. Battery charger.
Yeah.
Multimeter.
Okay.
Axle tools. The lesson that I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
A chain breaker riveter. I mean, I've not gone there yet, but yeah, I think that's an important thing. A brake bleeder.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important one that I've invested in is a factory service manual.
Oh, yeah.
So
No question.
these are my 10 ones. What are your 10 now?
Okay, so we'll go with in the reverse order, because for me, before I do anything, before I go out to get tools, before I go out and think of what do I have to work on my motorcycle on, the first thing I do is get a service manual.
Yeah.
Without the service manual, I cannot work on a motorcycle. It is just something that I cannot do. In the early days when I started the garage, when people used to come up and be like, "Boss, I want to do this job," even though I'm sitting free, I'll tell them, "I'll give you this appointment," because in that meantime, I'll download the service manual, I'll study the service manual, and then I'll start working on it.
Yeah.
It is one of the most important tools to have, no question. Point one.
Yeah.
Point two being, you need to have a torque wrench.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential. If you're going to open a bolt, you need to know how tight it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
And there's this one line that Ryan from Fortnite has said in one of his videos, and I've sworn by it. And he says there are excellent mechanics out there who can feel the right amount of torque just with their hand.
Yeah.
But there are even better mechanics who always use a goddamn torque wrench.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that. I've heard that line at many garages in India.
Yeah.
Lots of them. Yeah.
So, torque wrench part two. Then we can, deviate into, okay, do you want to do mechanical or do you want to do, electronics? A lot of my clients are very scared in terms of working on mechanical part, but they're very comfortable working on electronic wirings, and it's the other way around as well.
Yeah.
So, then we can, our tool set can, the last 5 items can change a little bit. But before that, you need a ratchet set, and you need 2 different sizes. So I use a 1/2-inch drive and a 3/8-inch drive ratchet sets. The 3/8-inch drive needs to have a, flex extension and, U-joints, and they're pretty much standard in most ratchet sets that come now.
Yeah.
So 2 different ratchet sets to do different jobs. Sometimes you need to get inside, and the flex extensions and the U-joints really help it. The smaller ratchet sets should have the bits as well. So they should have the Allen keys and the torques and all of those as well.
Yeah.
Then you have the bigger ratchet set, which will have your sockets and which will have, the ratchet and the key handle and all of that. If you need any odd size sockets or something which are for your motorcycle, you will have to get them additionally extra, which is why you need to study a service manual.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I had 2 other sets, which were, one was a Allen key socket set. So that houses everything from a 5 mm Allen key all the way to up to a 22 mm Allen key, and it's a 1/2-inch drive socket set. So it fits at the end of my ratchet.
Yeah.
Makes my life much easier. And I have a very similar Torx bit set. If you have, BMWs or something like that, then a Torx bit helps. On my Daytona, the chassis mounting bolts and the engine mounting bolts are all Torx heads.
Yeah.
So that is another side of it. I would recommend you get, no question, paddock stands. The minimum that you should have is at least a rear paddock stand.
Yeah.
But I really love the triple tree paddock stand, which goes at the bottom of your steering stem, lifts the whole of the front motorcycle up, and if you have to do forks or something like that, then you can slide the forks out on it. I am not really comfortable working with on front paddock stands. I find them less stable than the triple tree, but If you have to just remove a wheel or something, then they are good enough as well.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. After this, I would look at something like, obviously you need to have a basic multimeter. So if something goes wrong, you need to have the multimeter to test wiring and everything. I would recommend shell a little bit extra and get something which has a diode tester.
Okay.
So with the diode tester, you can test your regulator rectifier, which I do a lot. So if in your charging circuit, if your regulator rectifier is not charging your battery properly, you do need a diode tester for you to be able to test the rectifier of the motorcycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not very expensive. It's just a little bit more over a good quality standard one. So get a good quality one with a diode tester, and that should do the job. I would also say the next thing would be having a soldering iron and a heat gun.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right. So soldering iron, if you have wire breaks or anything like that, don't just screw them and tape them, and don't do that. Get soldering iron, solder the wires, especially if they are important, ECM wires or sensor wires or something like that. Solder them, put a heat shrink on them, heat them with the heat gun, and that is about that. The heat gun is also used for a lot of other things. So sometimes you have to, wheel bearings install, or sometimes, bolts are stuck or something like that. You can obviously heat them up. And that eases your effort in terms of working on whatever part you're working on.
Yeah.
Other important tool would be, so this is something off which, usually people don't think of, but I would really like to put it. And this goes to a lot of, if some garage people are listening to them as well, cleaning tools.
Yeah.
You need to have, I have like 3 different type of cleaning solutions and these are apart from my brake cleaner and my car cleaner and my engine degreaser. Apart from that, I have 3 different solutions of cleaning tools. One for paint, one for grime, one for brake calipers. I have 3 different, cleaning those. In that bunch, I have different sizes of brushes and different things which can go inside and clean a lot of spaces, microfiber cloths, tissue papers, and a lot of other things. So cleaning tools, very important. Another thing that I would get is something which is called a breaker bar.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So a breaker bar is a very extended piece of T. It basically lets you allow a lot of force and these are only used on your main axle. So your front axle, rear axle, swing arm axle, maybe the engine mounting bolts. Anything else, if you're going to use a breaker bar for, then you're probably going to be very literal with the meaning and probably break something.
I think even the front sprocket requires a high torque. That's what it's required? You need a breaker bar for that, right? I'm guessing.
Yes, the front sprocket does need a breaker bar in most cases, although I have had incidents where I have used, and I'm not kidding you, I've used like a 6 feet long breaker bar with extensions and everything, and it still won't come loose.
Wow. Okay.
And on the other side of it, what I do is I now have a pneumatic impact wrench.
Yeah.
And with the impact wrench, you just put it on, just brr, and it just comes off just like that. So that is another difference where, the home and the professional garage will be a little bit different. The homeowner can, spend about an hour trying to open that bolt, but we cannot afford to do that. And the homeowner cannot afford to have a compressor and a pneumatic line and an impact wrench just for, a DIY project.
No,
so that is
we're keeping your business. Don't worry. The DIYers are not going to take your business away.
No, actually, on the contrary, I encourage a lot of people to do the DIY job. So I had a brake cleaning video on my IGTV, and one of my clients just called me off the blue and he said, "Boss, I watched your video and I'm in middle of the job and I'm just a little bit confused, and I spent like an hour talking to him, explaining to him, okay, do this. I feel really happy when people do their own DIY jobs. I know for a fact it does not impact my business, because the more you do it, the more you realize that for the money that we are charging is way too less for the jobs that we do. So I really promote people to do DIY, and that should not really be a problem to me.
Yeah. Great. I think you've covered everything that I had a question on. It's the topic is interesting because not many people really have put in time, effort, money into it. I feel it's a good investment. It's a good investment to have good tools at home.
No question about it. So what I will do is I will give a couple of shout outs to a few excellent tools which have really, blown me away with how they were. So one of them is Nipex adjustable plier. and I got it about a couple of years ago. And that one plier which goes from about 5 all the way up to 25 of nuts, it will do all of them. I got that 2 years ago for about 9 to 10 grand, and it was very expensive when I got it, for me at least. So I spent a month contemplating whether I should, whether I shouldn't. But once I got it, over the past 2 years, that tool has been a tool which surprises me every single time.
Yeah.
I have stood on that tool, even though it's an adjustable wrench. I have stood on that tool. It does not, it does not have even a small amount of wear on it, and it works beautifully for a lot of things. That is one. A few other tools are, I have a Wurth bit box set. So it houses a wide variety of small bits that I can use on a screwdriver, or an Allen key, or a Torx bit set. And you will get much cheaper bit boxes sets as well. But the grip on these Booth ones is excellent.
Okay.
No question. The next thing that I don't have yet, but I have used them during my degree when I was in the UK. I've used them. I know how good they are, and I know they are worth the money. I just haven't found enough justification in the business to be able to buy them.
Yeah.
But these are the Vera Joker sets.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they are something else. If you ever get, whoever's listening, if you have the money, buy them, and use them, you will not regret getting them. And if you are not making good use of them, you can always sell them to me later at a cheaper.
No, they are. I've actually handled the one that you're saying, the Veda Joker sets, man. It's a patented technology, but it's just amazing. Just the feeling of even the ratchet, the way it moves, and it's just another level. Like I said, there's a few people who get a high on good tools. That's me.
No question. Tools to me are what diamonds are to women.
Yeah.
In my free time, most people might be watching a lot of YouTube videos on blogs or whatever. I spend my time scrolling through different tool manufacturers' websites and seeing what new is in the tool market.
Yeah.
That's what I do in my free time. So tools are a big this to me.
Got it. Great, man. We always love to have you again and again, and you give us the best information that we can ask you of. So thanks again. I've got to come up with more topics for you now.
Most welcome. Yes, I'll try to think of some more as well. But I don't think we'll run out of them for a long amount of time.
Great. Thanks, man. Thanks, Zen. Yeah.
Most welcome. Most welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. I want to hear your stories, your motorcycle experiences, what you've been doing, and how motorcycles have made your life better. So if you have something to say, DM us on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to get you on this podcast.